Since so many of you wanted me to talk about more Brazilian cars, brands, so on and so forth on that video, today I'll be doing just that. Today's video is the long-awaited sequel to my vid about the Brazilian car industry. I'll be talking about a couple of cars I missed in my previous video about them, as well as the brands I missed. If you think I forgot about any other cars or brands, feel free to leave a comment down below telling me about them. With all that said, let's get going, shall we? One of the companies that people mentioned in the comments of my previous video was Troller. Founded in 1995, Troller was a company that specialized in off-road vehicles. Its first car would end up beginning production in 1999, that being the Troller T4, with either an all-wheel drive or a rear-wheel drive powertrain and a range of turbo diesel engines during its life. The Troller T4 ended up getting sold until 2021, which was when Troller went defunct, and we'll get to why it went defunct in a moment. Despite the T4's long lifetime, Troller only had around 10,000 examples of the rugged SUV sold by 2010, and I'm not sure if that's a lot for a new car in Brazil, but it definitely isn't a lot for a new car, say here in Europe, where I'm from. Moving on, the only other vehicle made by the company was the Pantanal, a pickup truck sold between 2006 and 2008. Only 77 Pantanals were made, most likely making it one of the rarest cars ever made. Then again, you'll probably never see one on the road even in Brazil, because all of them were recalled because of the possibility of cracks forming in the chassis. Now then, you heard earlier about how the Troller T4 was killed off because the company became defunct. You're probably wondering why that happened, and we'll have to go a little bit back in time to 2007, when Troller was acquired by Ford's Brazilian division. Ford Brazil ceased its operations in 2021, and so funding for Troller was cut. Ford tried to sell the company and was taking part in negotiations with the Ceará government, a governing body for the Ceará state of Brazil, but in the end, Ford came to the conclusion that it just wouldn't sell Troller, and so the company ended up dying along with Ford's Brazilian division. That's pretty sad, but at least it had one well-known car. After all, the Troller T4 was the best-selling SUV in Brazil at the end of 2008. That's really it when it comes to Troller, and so we shall move on now. For the second part of today's video, I have decided to spend some time talking about some cars that I forgot to mention in my last video about Brazil's vehicles. Then again, most of these I didn't even know about prior to seeing the comments I got on that video, so it's interesting to talk a little bit about these automobiles that I am not too familiar with. The first car on today's list is the Chevrolet Opala, a mid-size vehicle part of the E segment. Available in saloon, coupe and estate forms, the Opala was based on the Opel Rekord C, although it utilized design styling and engines from General Motors' North American offerings. This robust saloon proved to be rather popular, with GM selling the Opala for well over 20 years. Its reliability and easy maintenance made it the ideal car for the police, races, taxis and even the government. One of the Opala's engines, the 4.1 litre 250S 6-cylinder engine, made it a formidable competitor in the races it took part in, with its main rival being the Ford Maverick Coupe from the 70s. In fact, this engine was so good that GM decided to keep it as part of the range of engines the Chevy Opala's successor had, that being the Chevy Omega. When it comes to some updates the car had throughout its lifetime, it did get two more luxurious variants, each called the Comodoro and Diplomata. The Opala itself also got a facelift sometime in the 80s, overhauling the front slightly. Other than that, the Opala remained the same for much of its lifespan, and judging by the amount of comments I got suggesting this car on that last video, the Chevy Opala is probably a widely celebrated car in Brazil. Now then, when it comes to some other Brazilian vehicles, I somehow didn't mention the Gurgel, sorry if I pronounced this wrong, Itaipu. This oddly proportioned city car was the first ever electric automobile to be made in Latin America, with production starting and ending in 1975. Only around 20 were made as far as I'm aware, and because of that, the Itaipu is now considered a collector's item. Another electric car made by Gurgel was the Itaipu E400, which may sound like a successor to the old Itaipu, but it actually isn't. Instead, the Itaipu E400 is a van with an additional pickup body style. It was sold between 1981 and 1983 and was essentially a rebodied Volkswagen Type 2, which in Brazil is also known as the Kombi. The Itaipu E400, later known as just the E500, also had a version with an internal combustion engine called the G800. Good to know. Okay then, enough about electric cars. How about we talk about the Hyundai HB20? This is another car suggested to me by a viewer of that old video. Many thanks to them. This is essentially the Brazilian counterpart of the Hyundai i20, which is sold here in Europe among other places. Unlike our European version, the HB20 has got not just a saloon version called the HB20S, but also a so-called mini SUV version called the HB20X, which surprisingly enough has four-wheel drive, and that's something that you don't see every day. Here in Europe, we have hatchbacks that claim to be crossovers with their rugged stylings, and yet none of them have all-wheel drive. If only we had an SUV version of the i20, but I digress. Surprisingly enough, the HB20 sells surprisingly well for a new car in Brazil, even if it is technically a budget car, with over 1 million having been sold since 2012. I can imagine the main reason for that is its flex fuel engine, which is, from what I know, a common sight in not just Brazil, but in the whole of South America. This is basically an engine that can run on any fuel it was made for. Some of these engines can run on pure gasoline or ethanol, while some can run on pretty much anything, like the Ford Model T for example. Its engine can run on ethanol, gasoline, kerosene, or a mix of the first two. I guess you could also say the same about the Mercedes W123's diesel engines, which are known for their ability to run on vegetable oil out of all things. What I mean is that flex fuel engines are something that is rarely seen here in Europe. Coming back to the Hyundai HB20, it is, from what I can imagine, most likely a great budget car that is quite popular. Moving on, our next car for today is the Volkswagen SP2, a sports coupe sold by VW exclusively in Brazil from 1972 to 1976. Conceived as a successor to the Karmann Ghia and built on its chassis, the SP2 was mainly designed to freshen Volkswagen's dull presence in the Brazilian market. With a 1.7 litre flat-4 engine under the hood, the Volkswagen SP2 produced 64 horsepower at most, a good amount for the mid-70s. It's hard to decide whether or not the SP2 was a success at the time, with around 10,000 units built during its lifespan. What do you think? Is it a good amount of sales in Brazil at the time? I'm not a Brazilian, so I have no idea. Let me know in the comments if you know. Anyway, the SP2 is considered a collector's item nowadays, and is also thought to be one of the most beautiful Volkswagens of all time. I don't know about the latter. I reckon that the Karmann Ghia looks better, but that's just my opinion. That should be enough about the SP2, and so let's move on. Our second to last Brazilian car for today is the Agrale Marua, a military SUV made by Brazilian manufacturer Agrale. With its name meaning wild bull in Brazilian Portuguese, The Marua was developed in the early 2000s as a replacement to the Brazilian military's aging Jeeps, Bandeirantes and GPXs, while also getting adopted by several other South American armies. Despite its main purpose being to serve the army, civilian versions are also available. The Marua is powered by a turbo diesel engine pumping out 132 horsepower, an ideal engine for such a vehicle. There's really not much else to say about the Agrale Marua, and so let's get on with our last car for today, the Fiat Palio. Now you're probably already thinking, actually, the Palio was also sold in Europe, and you are right, but this Italian hatchback was actually quite a popular car not just in Brazil, but in the whole of Latin America, even getting a second generation that was only sold there. First though, we have to talk about the first generation, which was introduced in Brazil in 1996. Brazilian models were assembled in Betim, meaning that Palios sold in Brazil were locally built. The Fiat Palio was discontinued in Europe in 2003, although the company continued to sell it in Brazil. The following year, the Palio got a major facelift, overhauling the car's appearance to match Fiat's then new design language. This facelift ended up getting sold until 2016 in certain territories, but not in Brazil. Around the same time, a crossover-styled version called the Palio Adventure was introduced, being based on the Estates version of the hatchback. This facelift would be followed by yet another facelift in 2007, which slightly changed the front of the hatch. There's not much to say about this one, although in some parts of the world, this version of the Palio was sold all the way until 2020. At least, the Estates version was sold for so long. Following the discontinuation of the first generation Palio in Brazil, the second generation was introduced in 2011 with a completely new design. Unlike the previous generation, the new Palio was only available as a hatchback. I guess you could say that the Grand Siena Saloon is the saloon version of the new Palio, but this also Latin American saloon is only based on the Palio's platform, but other than that, does not share any similarities. Coming back to the Palio, it was sold until 2018, and after that it was succeeded by the Argo, another hatchback from South America. That's really it when it comes to Brazilian cars. There are many more that I didn't mention, and I guess I might talk about the cars that I missed in a short or another video. Who knows? We'll see. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to like and subscribe. If I missed any cars or brands from Brazil, please let me know in the comments down below. I would really appreciate it. Oh yeah, and if you have a suggestion for an upcoming video, feel free to share it in the comments too. That's all from me. This is Autofill. See you later.